happened?
Oh, you're live now.
Oh.
All right, so we're live. So if you guys are watching yourselves on your phone, you'd see it. So welcome to PCL Live, and today we're talking about the top 10 mistakes leaders make. So what that like? And our topic today is shutting down Mavericks, right? Shutting down Mavericks. So we're going to give you guys some time to get on. And as you're getting on the feed, just let us know where you are watching from, what city, what state, so we can say hello to you. We have two special guests today, but I'll give them a minute before we have them introduce themselves. So, all right. So, yep, shutting down Mavericks. And I'm looking forward to what you guys have to say today regarding corporate culture, regarding entrepreneurship, and just just leadership really in general that supports or rejects this type of these types of people in the organization. All right, so we have Alfonso from Omaha. Welcome, Alfonso. Nice to have you here. Houston, nice to have you here. Boston, nice to have you here. Louisiana, nice to have you here. Chantel, Jasmine, Alfonso, nice to have you guys here. Sean from San Diego, nice to have you here. Welcome. We're going to welcome, Poland, nice to have you here. Egypt, nice to have you here. San Diego again, nice to have you here. We'll give it about 30 more seconds before we begin with introductions. Hi, Philly. Nice to have you here. Philadelphia, Tennessee. Nice to have you here. We want you guys to participate today with your questions and your comments like you always do. Nice to have you here, Nairobi. Kenya's always a big watcher here. Berlin, Germany. Nice to have you here. South Africa, great to have you here. Mauritius Island, nice to have you here. Okay, we'll give 20 more seconds and we'll get started. Shutting down Mavericks. Yes, Chantel, that's what we're talking about today. New York, nice to have you here, New York. All right, so Navajo Tribe, Arizona, nice to have you here. Virginia, nice to have you here. All right, today we're talking about Hello Flo, see some of my regulars and a bunch of new people. Nice to have you all here. Mars. Not Mars, right? Mars, Pennsylvania. I mean, we're not that popular yet, right? All right. So today we're talking about shutting down Mavericks. And my name is Sharon Gill, and I am the founder of PCL, Purpose-Centered Leadership and Entrepreneurship, and also a business and leadership coach working with entrepreneurs and leaders to help them with clarity, strategy, mission, vision, values, help to make them better. And today I'm honored to have these two special guests with me, my friend Lisa Lang, who is an attorney, thought leader, and also the general counsel at Kentucky. Is it Kentucky State, Lisa?
Yes.
And Lisa has, follow her, by the way. I'm going to have my assistant put their LinkedIn pages in the feed so you guys can follow them. Lisa is an attorney who makes the law look amazing. So follow Lisa. She has she'll talk a little bit more about her blog that she just launched, but great content. And then Sean, who I met recently, is also a business coach. I call him a business mentor because he helps organizations think through their strategies, especially work as it relates to teams and their performance. So we want to hear some more about that as well. So welcome guests. And Lisa, I'll have ladies first. If you want to say a little bit more than what we said in the introduction, go right ahead. I'll give you 30 seconds to say a little bit more of a pitch. And also, Sean, you'll go next.
Okay, so I think for the purposes of this conversation, I think it's helpful to know that my background has been long and varied and very much non-traditional. I started my legal career not as a lawyer, but as a paralegal, and I did it in the military. And I got a lot of my initial leadership training in the military. After law school, then I went into private practice, then I went into government work, and now I'm at a university. So when we have discussions about leadership, I bring with it that experience, which I think really has shaped my beliefs and my opinions about leadership.
Thank you, Lisa. I mean, I love following your content because it's definitely leadership bent, but just the way how you interpret the law and make the law just, I say the word palatable, but you just make the law so interesting. Me being not an attorney, but being in the legal field for 20 something years, it's just so refreshing to read your content. So thank you for being here. Sean, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Man, I can't follow Lisa. No, I'm just kidding. So my name is Sean Christie. I'm the CEO of a company called People First. We've been around for over 50 years, helping mega corporations think bigger about who they are and what they can offer the world, and help transform leadership to help transform and ignite the people that they're under. I've also learned my leadership very much similar to Lisa. I've been in the military now 12 years. So Lisa, thank you for your service. And we like to transpose that, everything I've learned from accounting to finance to all the different areas I've been, to help people think better so they can lead better and get better results.
Thank you, Sean. So, all right. So we've been discussing the top 10 mistakes that leaders make. And so we've discussed top-down attitude, which we talked about, 4 weeks ago, putting paperwork before people work, which was 2 weeks ago. Last week was the absence of affirmation. And this week it's what I call shutting down Mavericks. No room for Mavericks, right? So who are Mavericks in an organization? Mavericks that was a name I think was more used years ago. We call them the creatives right now. We call them the entrepreneurs. We found a great name for them recently. It's entrepreneurs, people who have differing ideas from the norm, from the status quo. And there are some organizations that embrace this type of thinking, this type of employee, but there's also others that shut that down. And there were some phrases that I was reading, right? If you're in a company that's typically saying this to the person with an outside voice, that's impossible. Or we don't do things that way around here. It's too radical a change for us. Or it's against policy to do it that way. Or how dare you suggest that what we're doing is wrong? If you're in that type of environment, I would dare to say that you are the type that strangles independent thought. And so I wanted to ask our guests today, what is their take on that, right? What have you seen in terms of, the freedom of employees who have differing ideas to say those ideas to management, to leadership, and to get that embraced? Is it based on the culture? Is it based, where can an employee like that thrive? And how does that happen in an organization? Is it from the CEO? Where does that come from with the culture? Because how do we embrace these thinkers in our companies nowadays?
I'll let you go first, Lisa.
Well, I think what's important to note is that it's about sharing of ideas. It's not necessarily the execution of those ideas. And so I think when you talk about embracing ideas, it's about having people understand and to accept those ideas, to listen those ideas, to hear those ideas. And I think what's very important for people who are more junior to understand that we want you at the table. We want to hear what you have to say. We're open to your ideas. But I think as a junior, you also have to understand that there is context and there are sometimes things that you don't know and understand. So having come from a family that was in the military, my dad would always, when we were growing up, provide us with an explanation why he did something the way that he did it. But what he would tell us is, do it right now because I told you to do it, because your question's not appropriate at this moment, but wait and let's get to the other side and I'll explain to you, while that may have been a good idea, why we couldn't have done it. So I grew up in a household where ideas we weren't discouraged from sharing them, but we also understood that there was a time and there was a place, and just because you were heard doesn't necessarily mean that they were going to act what you suggested. And that was not necessarily because of the value of what you brought forward, but sometimes it's not the right time and it's not the right place.
Okay, let me hear Sean's take on this, on this particular topic, because I may differ a little bit from Lisa.
Yeah, so trying to piggyback what Lisa was saying, ideation, or the idea of innovation, is a result. It's an outcome of a healthy culture within an organization. So you can't force people to do it. It's the ideation is the outward living of the inward freedom that people are feeling that the culture is allowing them to do. So if you have leadership and people that are suppressing ideation, usually because of pride, which I'm sure we're going to talk about what causes this later, that's what doesn't allow them to ideate. And ideation and creating ideas is super important because it follows what's called the law of requisite variety, meaning the more ideas that you get out, the more likely it's going to be that you're going to find the right idea. If you only got 2 people given 3 ideas versus 10 people given 150 ideas, kind of like what Lisa was saying, maybe we're not going to execute on all of them, but you got to have all those ideas out on the playing field in order to work with that and to create the results you want. Some of the best things that I've experienced with companies, for example, my background is finance. Some of the best problems I've been solved from a financial perspective have never been from finance people, because you can't see the picture when you're stuck in the frame. So by allowing these Mavericks or these individuals to just churn and burn on ideas gives us more opportunities to find solutions to the problems that we're solving, especially in today's business environment.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with the ideation process, Lisa, because I grew up in a culture in Jamaica where, it was just common knowledge that children should be seen and not heard, right? That was a shutdown culture. I didn't like it, because I was an inquisitive kid, right? And so when I think about shutting down Mavericks, I go back to that script, like seen but not heard. And there are a lot of companies who they just have there's no room for ideation. It's our way or the highway, and it stifles so much creativity and growth. And we find that more mature companies, older companies who are more set in their ways, tend to be more of this way. Usually if it's a startup company, they might be more open to ideas. Everyone's getting off the ground. But the more structured a company is, the older, the more dug in, it's the harder for them to change, to shift. And you think about, in the last several years with companies like Google and Apple and these companies, right, that allow for these Mavericks. I think it was 3M, right? The Post-it notes was an idea that came from an employee on company's time that they allowed. And I know other companies began to follow that model, where we are now creating a space for what we call intrapreneurs, right? Entrepreneurs who are within our company, and we're going to allow for that. And what Google and Apple, some of these more cutting edge companies are finding out is that great ideas and products are coming from their people, right? Not the normal, R&D people, but from just people with ideas that they've allowed space for. And I think that if other companies would just copy this model and at least allow for the ideation, they wouldn't be as stuck. Sean, you consult with companies. I consult with companies who are in an impasse. They're stuck, but they're good people in the seats with great ideas that they haven't bothered to ask about. And your frontline workers, excuse me, know more about the issues than you in the CEO's suite. So I want to throw it on the floor again, and hand it back over to you, Lisa.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. I think sometimes part of the problem is that you have within a company, you have all sorts of different obstacles. You've got different stakeholders who are in different departments, and then you've got people at different levels. And so what I think is very important, whether you're doing a product or you do a service, is to have mechanisms by which different people from different areas can come together to share ideas at all levels. And at least from the university, what we've done, especially with COVID, that I think has been very helpful, is that we've got the Green and Gold Task Force. And these are the opportunities for people on campus to come together to have conversations about how it is that we can perform the delivery of education services in a way that not only, it best fits the needs of our students, but it's also fitting the needs and the concerns of our faculty, and keeping everybody safe. So I think that's an example of in the last 12 months where you bring people together and you're open to all ideas, because part of what we had to do is figure out a way to navigate forward with all these different people who had all these different concerns at all different levels. And so I think we sort of kind of did implement that model for the purpose of COVID.
I'm glad Lisa mentioned that, because what we saw last year, right, because of COVID, we saw a lot of companies that weren't agile, right? They couldn't pivot, right? They were too heavy. They were too structured. They weren't, they weren't investing in technology. They weren't investing in the next thing, perhaps because they're set in their ways, right? And this is, again, why it's so important that you have an agile culture, a culture that's always looking forward thinking, because something like COVID happened and then many companies did not know how to continue on. Right? It was either the brick and mortar way or no way. And so I want to talk a little bit more about corporate culture. Who is responsible? Sean, you work with organizations, and what are you seeing out there? What are the trends are we seeing out there with corporate culture, especially in this post-COVID world? Are we getting more open to, are we being more open to these Mavericks? And Lisa, we will talk about those people who just keep stalking. They're not the good Mavericks that we want. So we'll talk about the opposite of the good Mavericks too, people who actually need to go out of your company, not the ones who need to stay. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But Sean, what are you seeing out there in terms of corporate culture?
So corporate culture, it starts with, what is culture? Culture are like the invisible strings that guide people's behavior. They're the ethos, they're the untouchable things that guide us all. And what really guides culture is thinking. So what we teach is you have business systems, you have people systems, but what drives both people and business systems is thinking systems. If you want to change the result, you have to change the thinking that goes into the result. Okay, leaders that tend to suppress Mavericks is because when they see another human being, they don't see this bottomless, shoreless repository of unbelievable, incredible imagination, creativity. They think, oh, that's an employee, which comes from the French word, it's somebody that works for a wage. But if I see you as a human being, like Lisa's experience, even though she's an attorney, she can bring incredible background to finance, incredible background to education, which is where she plays now. You can't say, well, that's Lisa from legal, so go play over there, Lisa. And you can't do that. So it all starts with the thinking first. If you want to change a result, you got to change the thinking. So on that note, what do I see in culture? The teams that are winning, the businesses that are winning, are the ones that have the winning thoughts. They're the ones that see that the gold and the answers to the problems are within the culture are there. And from that thinking, then, like Lisa was saying, they design methodologies to extract the good ideas. Maybe they have 6-hat methodology, maybe they do town halls, or they do all these other methodologies to get those people to share ideas. And then it goes back to that law of requisite variety. The more ideas we have, the more we can handle and survive in this volatile and definitely uncertain business environment.
Going back to what Lisa said and back to what you said as you were talking, I was thinking about, cross-functional teams, right? You said, that's Lisa from legal, right? And so companies who think of Lisa from legal and this one from finance, right? They're really missing out because, I see such value in having the different voices, the diversity of voices. Diversity is not just color, it's ideas, it's background, right? It's so much. And when we talk about embracing diversity, of course, color is the obvious choice, but let me embrace the accounting guy who we think of as a nerd, right? And let's embrace the legal lady who's like the legal person. What does she have to say? No, we would know that at least it has a military background, right? So as you said, if we would see people not so much as employees, right? And it goes back again to leadership, to the CEO, to the person who's at the top here. They have to set the tone for the culture. They have to set the tone for the values. When I work with organizations, I always go back to start with, so what are your values? What are your values? do you value innovation? Do you value people? Do you value, just openness? What are your values? Because that's going to drive the behaviors of everything that you do. It's going to also drive the behaviors of the managers that you've put in place over these people. And so as we talk about the different divisions coming together, the cross-functional teams, I don't even hear as much about that as before. Lisa, you mentioned a little bit about getting everyone to the table for COVID. During COVID. Do you see that continuing on post-COVID in your particular organization that maybe perhaps prior to COVID would not have been so open, but now with COVID, you were able to get people together to think of solutions. Do you see this continuing on beyond COVID? And what are some of the advantages or disadvantages of doing it that way?
Yeah, I really, really hope that we continue to see this trend. And, when you were talking about the diversity of thought, it's not just in the diversity in terms of also the different offices, it's also generational. And there's been a lot of conversations because right now you're seeing more people working 4 generations, 3 generations deep. And I think that because of COVID, we had to learn how to do things online, and we had to learn how to rely on our technology and our devices. And what's so funny is when you look at that multi-generational approach also, I think what we've learned is, we were at 15% online, and within a week we went 100%. And for a long time, people were saying, we can't do it, we can't do it, we can't do it. And then all of a sudden, guess what? We did it. And the thing is, I think there is a lot that we can learn from the younger generations when you talk about technology and innovation and what we learned to be agile and to be able to pivot and to be able to continue to deliver the services we were delivering. We had to learn how to do it. And so I do think, and I am hopeful that we will continue to see this model as being important because there's something that can be brought by every generation. And the thing is, this whole social media thing, 12 months ago, I would not have been on LinkedIn. I barely knew how to text. But so I like to think, and I hope that we will continue going forward. I am not so much of a Pollyanna that I don't realize that there are going to be some people who say, okay, that was fine during COVID, and then they try and pull back and regress. And I do see that as something that will happen, but I know I will be kicking and screaming against that because I really see when you look at solving problems and solutions, we've done a lot of great good in the last 12 months because we've allowed people to the table and had that diversity of conversation.
And I'm glad you said that because that's what I was thinking, right? So now that the crisis is over and we're going back to the old normal, right? What happened to this creativity, the round tables, to the town halls? Is that going to continue? And again, it goes back to leadership, right? It can continue only if the leader sees that it should continue, only if the leader sees that vision. And you also mentioned the multi-generational. There are some companies with even 5 generations of people working there now, right? And when you think about the fact that a year ago, you wouldn't be on a live, you wouldn't have a vibrant page. COVID had a lot of bad, but it also had a lot of good when it came to reinventing ourselves, right? Personally pivoting as well. COVID did a lot of good, and I really want to talk about it a little bit. I want to put up on the screen, right, just some sayings that I'm going to put this first one up. Okay, so there's no reason for any individual to have a computer in their home. This was Ken Olson, president of digital equipment, in 1977. No reason for anyone to have a computer in their home. That was 1977. Now everyone has a computer in their home. Now we have it in our hands. So in 1977, that man couldn't see a point for you to have a computer in your home. No one. Now everyone has one, and now we have it on our hands, on our watches, everywhere, right? I'm going to give you another one from IBM, which was in 1943. I think there is a world market for about 5 computers for the entire world, 1943. And I put those comments up because right now there are people thinking thoughts. There are thought leaders within our organizations right now who are being stifled because their ideas sound so off the wall. And IBM missed it with certain things, right? 3M missed it with certain things. And we wonder, what are we missing as leaders? Because we refuse to have that Gen Z say something. I learned so much from my own millennial kids, right? I have a Gen Z or Gen something granddaughter. Learned so much from her, right? So what are we not allowing? What are we stifling because of our own fears, our own just, Shauna, I'd like you to just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say sum it all up into one word, and that's hubris. And that means excessive pride.
Yeah.
So the belief, the truth is that a human being is a bottomless, shoreless repository of ideas. Like, we're all made to do that. That's what separates us from every animal on earth, is to ideate, to think.
Yeah.
If you start from that belief, when you see a human being, they have incredible ideas, then that's the starting point. Then from there, you have pride that says, well, I've been doing this knee high since you were knee high to a short dog, or the 7 killer words. We've always done it that way. It all comes from, we've all been saying, comes from the mind, it comes from your thinking habits. Quick story. There's a scientist named Michael Faraday who is known to come up with hundreds and hundreds of inventions. He started out as a laborer in a library, high school dropout, didn't finish any school. All he did was take books from the library and read science, electricity, and all these different ideas. And eventually, I can't remember the professor, but there was a famous professor, had a lecture. He went to his lecture. He took all of his notes, wrote a tome, and brought it to him and said, hey, here's some notes I had on your ideas. And he became one of the world's most brilliant minds in electricity and science. And on his deathbed, that scientist said, what was your greatest discovery? And he says, my greatest discovery was Michael Faraday.
Yeah.
Right. Or even, you see those exit signs, in hotels, you have some on the top and some on the bottom. Folks, that came from 3rd graders.
Right.
So you got to understand that when you see a human being, it's ideas. They're not Lisa from legal. It's like, oh, she's really good at legal, so let's just go to her. We're in trouble. It's when you begin with the right ideas, and you're right, it does come from the leader. I'm glad you said that.
It does.
We say the personal drives the professional. So if your personal values aren't in line and in tune, everything downstream from there will affect you and get the results. So the people who are very clear about ideation and put it as a priority and understand the capacity of the human beings, not the human doings in their organization, they win in this.
If I could say anything to leaders, who are watching this right now, I would say, adopt a more open mind. Now, I want to address that there are Mavericks and then there are troublemakers. And Lisa, I want to go to Lisa on this. Lisa with a military background. How do we know the difference between a true Maverick, a true entrepreneur, right? A true game changer from someone who's just talking? How can we tell? I have some points here, but how can you tell?
Yeah, and so I think that, you've got people who will take a look at how things are being done, and you talk about the hubris of the leader, but sometimes you have the hubris of somebody who, the young maverick, that believes that it's just as much their way and not the ways that other people have done some things. And, and I'll give you an example from my military experience. I learned very quickly when I would rotate duty stations. You would go from one duty station to another duty station. And in the legal world, you would end up with civilian workers, civilian paralegals who had been doing the job before you got there, and they're going to do the job after you leave. And the mistake a young maverick, I think, would make is they would come into that situation and automatically say, whatever you're doing is not right, and you need to do the way I think you should do it, and then not listen. So it's just as bad to do it, the opposite way, that way of change is better than the way that we've always done it. And I learned really quickly is you'd walk in and you need to ask questions. Why are you doing it the way you've been doing it? What are your pain points? What have you tried to do to change it? And what you found out is there's a reason why they did what they did. And there was a reason why they couldn't overcome doing it in a different way. So I think that it's just as easy to have the hubris at the lowest level as it is at the top of the levels too.
All right, Sharon, I'll let you respond to that and then I'll respond to it.
No, I want to add to it. That's exactly right. One thing, every civilization on Earth is dependent on the strict unanimity of thought. Anytime there's any conflict, and the basic unit of a civilization is a family. So I'm married, been married for 7 years now. When Sarah and I aren't thinking the exact same thing, that's when conflict begins. So you have those Mavericks, you were asking, how do you know when they're not the right fit, is when they're not thinking the same way as everybody else. And that's what culture is. Mm-hmm. How you treat your people is depending on how you all think, the shared values, the shared mission, the shared vision. If we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, well, then that's problems. And I would even challenge and say everybody in the organization should, I use that word, should be a Maverick. They should be thinkers. If we do everything right, everybody should be ideating all the time, no matter the position. And we should be encouraging as much as we can. So how do you know? Is if they don't display the values, they don't share the vision, they don't share the thinking, that's when you should probably exit them sooner rather than later.
I agree. I think we only need to agree on certain things: vision, mission, values. It's a true Maverick, right? Vision, mission, values. But I don't think we should all be thinking the same as a group think. And I think it is also incumbent upon the leader, not so much upon the Maverick, to know how to say it, because that's why they're a Maverick. They're going to say it not the right way. They're going to say, why are you doing it this way? Well, they don't know. They're asking. But if you are not open to the ask, you're going to shut it down. And that's what I see leaders do, because they're so, my way, highway type leaders, that the minute you dare ask a question, it's almost like scolding a child. It's almost like the same thing, seen but not heard, right? And if you keep doing that in your organization from the top down, and let me tell you, from the manager level down, no great ideas. We hear it, and I say this every week. People leave bad managers, right? They don't leave the mission. They don't leave the vision. They came there for the mission and the vision. They don't leave the values necessarily, but they leave the bad managers because they're shut down. They're not given a chance to express. They can do things a different way. Whenever I work with a company and I have to talk with the team, I ask the team, we meaning the company that I'm working with at the time, can we do things more effectively? When I ask that question as a consultant, it's amazing the results that I get, because I'm an outsider, but I'm asking a question. Now, had their own employer ask that same question with a true, authentic openness, they would have gotten those ideas without paying thousands of dollars to the consultants, right? Just asking the question. And so I like to ask questions in leadership. If you ask questions with a desire to actually hear the answers, you're going to get the next 5 years worth of innovation in your organization. I did a project once, right? This was like an entrepreneurial project. I had from the mail people, the mailroom people, all the way up to the paralegals, right? To the lawyers. Getting in cross-functional teams. That was important, that they would get into cross-functional teams to see how different departments work in the department, to come up with some ideas that would change how we do things. My God, some of the best ideas came from the mail people, people on the mail team, because they see things from a different level. We're seeing things at all different levels in the organization: legal level, boss level, manager level. And so we really miss an opportunity when we don't get people's ideas, especially the different ideas, and how we could on a whole do things better. So I want to encourage leaders today to really begin discussions, begin those roundtable talks, restate your vision, mission, and values, revisit them. They may need to be changed. You may want to ask your people, does this mission still work? Is it one from 1943? Because it really wouldn't be working necessarily now. Not now. People's mission didn't work between 2020 and 2019 because of COVID. And so if we're not asking questions, we're gonna hear, we're gonna plateau. We're gonna die off as companies, as organizations. I'm gonna give you guys the final words as we're at 35 minutes. I'm gonna have Lisa. If you haven't said something that you wanted to say, here's the time to say it now.
Yeah, so, the one thing I would say when you talk about leaders and being open, what I have seen and I really like is when you have these town halls and you have, say, a student make a suggestion to, say, the president, and what the president will say, you know what, that sounds like a really great idea, but that's not something that I know a lot about at my level. So here's the people that we should bring together to have a more robust conversation to see if what you're saying really makes sense. And then you bring those people together and you work through both the Maverick and those people, the managers, to say, you know what, can we do this? And then to start asking those questions. So I hope that leaders do that moving forward.
So before I go to Sean, to Lisa's point, no, you would think I'm anti-leaders, but I'm not. I just work with them so much and see how they're stuck in their ways a lot of times. That president, hypothetical president, right? We're not going to talk about if it's your school or whichever. When that Maverick, that person asks that question and the president graciously says, honestly, it's not my area. I'm going to put you with some people. If the culture of the organization is of such where those other people are the managers that are not empowered to actually have an open mind, ideas go to die there.
Right.
It comes back to the leader again, making sure that that's followed through in the culture.
Right.
Because a lot of times leaders punt it to the managers where it dies.
Yep. And that's why that follow-up conversation, you're exactly right, is that they say, I'm going to send you down, you all have a conversation, and then you bring back to me the solution that you all came to. And so that is that follow-up to make sure that it goes all the way down.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, Sean, your words.
Couple ideas. One is that agreement without disagreement is meaningless. So it's okay to disagree with ideas. That's what creates meaning. If like Sharon was talking about groupthink, if you're just one that says, yeah, great idea, I agree with you, well, then all your agreements don't mean anything. So it's okay to disagree. That's how you get the best ideas, is coming to one idea and thought. Second idea is that innovation is an outcome. It's a result. It's a result from the right inputs. So innovation is an output. So what are the good inputs? One, you have to be a learning organization.
Yeah.
You're not growing, you're dying. There is no maintaining. There is no flatlining. So if you're not investing in yourself to keep learning and growing, there's no way anybody else will keep doing that. Second, you got to invest in the relationships with the people. You got to know the people, the human being in front of you, not the human doing. Lisa, I keep teasing Lisa. Lisa is more than Lisa of legal. She's way more than that. She's got way more experience, way more knowledge, and way more capacity than just her law degree in her mind. You got to see that. And the last one that we have been dancing around is the idea of systems thinking. Okay. Mm-hmm. Once you start investing in the human beings, then you start to see everything as a system. Business is a system, folks. It's a system of HR, a system of legal, a system of accounting, a system of administration that all are interdependent on each other. So once you can start learning and seeing that, then you can start innovating on ideas to help elevate to the next level. And that's where I'll leave.
And I will just wrap it up by saying this. If your company is not growing, it's dying. There's no stagnant, right? You're either growing or you're dying. So having that culture of learning, continuous learning, innovation, ideas, ideation, brainstorming. Have an idea day for heaven's sake, right? And it goes back again to the culture at the top. Are you open to just throw things against the wall and just see, what's new? I really believe it's, especially as we enter this next, few years, with the workforce changing, things are changing so rapidly. It's so important that leaders open their minds, right? And go a little step further and invite the Mavericks, invite the different thinking. We don't have to adopt all the ideas, but it's good to hear because there's so much you can learn. This technology is changing so rapidly, but the people on the front lines know it. They know it more than us, the up at the top. And so I'm asking leaders to do a better job, right? A better job going forward, just being more open to ideation, brainstorming, revisiting the mission and the vision, the values, and making it's making organizations better, right? Making it more fun, making it more, I don't know, effective, because a lot of companies are not effective right now and they don't know it. You had something to say, Sean?
Just one more ad. If you're a leader, a high-level leader with a company, I want to tell you that authority, the true power is the power to make other people powerful. So if you're not empowering others to be the best version of themselves, that's not authority, that's dictatorship. So give people the authority to be the best version of themselves. That's true authority and power. So if, like what Sharon was saying, if you're not pumping people to do that for themselves, well, then you're the problem. So you should change. And call Sharon.
And I see a lot of comments, guys. I try to put some of the comments on the screen. We will answer them in the when I go back through. But thank you guys online for supporting us. Thank you, Lisa, for your input, your great contribution. Thank you, Sean. You guys are a great team. And thank you, audience. Until next week, we're checking out. Take care. Bye.
Bye.